welcome to my cellar. Got kind of a bummer today. I've been looking forward to completing the trifecta of civic responsibility. I've been a postal worker in 2000, or a census worker in 2000 and 2010. And I've been an election official in Hamilton County here several times. Not just a poll watcher, but the one that has to take the oath and all that stuff. And I was looking forward to jury duty, but I got dismissed today without ever actually having to report. So anyway, hope you had a good 4th of July. I think they finally run out of firecrackers and fireworks in my neighborhood. Start out with a little, you're welcome. Thanks for the video and one-shot recommendations. Give me plenty to work from us. Have a great week. I did. I am. Last I heard, if you wanted to give the magic user something only they could use to help out at low level, was a potion or a scroll. Oh yeah. I've done it myself. It was done. And I've heard of DMs that are so generous you almost need a shopping cart. But I always thought that a couple, three, one scroll, one spell scrolls or a potion was not out of line to help keep the guy alive, because it was to the party's advantage to not let him get croaked off, because once he did get up to where he was using, like 5th level, using 3rd level spells and stuff, well, he's a great guy to have in the party. But getting him up there, that was the hard part. They can find them. They can, give them their last job could have given them, their teacher could have given them to them as a parting gift. Yeah, there's lots of ways you can do it, and that's a great way to help. And we used to have a lot of scrolls, but the thing was, if you found the scroll but you still didn't know the spell, having the scroll didn't make you know the spell. You had to study, the first time, it was like, adding spells to your spell book. You had to know the spell, or have some experience in using it, or used on you, or, there were lots of ways, but yeah, a couple of handy-dandy, a good offensive spell, a good defensive spell. But there again, how high a level spell? See, now you got to do a little fudging, because if you want to give them a couple of spells that are worth having, and you play by the level rule, what level the player character is versus what level they can use. Okay, but go ahead and fudge. So what? It's your game. Have fun. Here's some suggestions on one-shots. Limit your one-shots to 10 to 15 good encounters / rooms, with 1 or 2 of these encounters being a secret room or hidden treasure everyone has to work to get. That'll give you a 3 to 4 hour one-shot that finishes nicely. Yes, it can. Except that I have found, it's been my experience that at conventions, it sometimes takes a great deal of time to get the party going. I believe the same thing can and is often true with a new group starting out afresh. On a one-shot, you're starting out afresh as far as adventure every time. However, after a couple, 3 of those, you should have a better understanding of the dynamics of your group and how the synergy that you need and produced to function effectively. Let's see. All right. Quick question you probably would ask a million times. Do you think basic D&D is better on rules as written, or rules adjusted some to suit the group? I always think that adjustments are the best way to go. Now, you can't do that, obviously, on a board game. You can't do that on a miniatures game. But hey, role-playing is all about loosey-goosey. Okay, now we're going to talk some more aspects of role-playing, and some further comments here are coming up. But I always recommend, especially if you're just getting a group, just getting them off the ground, so to speak, I especially recommend modifications so that they have fun. Okay? Let them kill some little wimpy dumpy stuff and get them involved. And then, okay, now give them some real stuff they got to think about. They can't just, it's not like going in and killing walking cabbages. I thought the scar question would have turned into, if I do get scars with magic, can I scar my whole body for the extra armor class? No. I would never allow that. Never allow that. All right, now this comment, I forgot about the enchanted sword of wounding. It made me think about a class that can heal others naturally. For example, barber, surgeon, herbalist, tribal shaman, medicine man, shield medic. What natural healers would your game lean towards? Herbalist, hedge wizard, witch, wise woman, spay woman. Okay, not poisoning apples to kill Snow White witch, but the hedge witch, the hedge wizard, the wise woman in the village that somehow always managed to get the sheep to birth okay, and sometimes the women in the village also. It fits in my concept of my world, so that's why I would use it. I always like the old hit point description. Okay, now we're going to talk about hit points. There's a number of comments here interspersed throughout, and rather than go back and cut and paste, I just like to go through and cut and paste in the order they're given and deal with them in that way. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. I always like the old hit points description of your ability to avoid the fatal blow. As a loss of hit points maybe you ducked, you parried, the blow glanced off your shield, you took a little more than a glancing blow against your armor. A hit point loss doesn't have to mean a wound. Yes. It doesn't have to mean a wound. I often inflict arbitrary, especially in conventions, I often inflict arbitrary small woundings, if you will. Something enormously loud happens and goes off. Well, in a confined space, everybody gets two hit points of auditory damage. And it may wear off or not, depending. And, I often let it wear off unless something loud and awful comes through again. Sound and obscuring sounds and not being able to hear each other is an aspect of design and dungeon mastering that I don't think enough people think about or could think about. Maybe more of them should or could. I'm not scolding. I'm suggesting. Right. Doesn't have to mean a wound. Good point. Points for the letter writer. Okay. Oh boy, I just bought a lot of independent tabletop RPGs from Drive-Thru RPG and going through some of them like Pirate Borg or Houses of the Blooded. It's fun. It's also refreshing to see see new ideas popping up. I agree. I don't buy a lot of new stuff, but if it gets given to me at con or something, I certainly look through it. It's an old habit. Used to look through things for finding stuff to steal. Now I do like to look through and see ideas, and sometimes I think they're brilliant, and oh God, why didn't I think about it? And sometimes I think, oh, stupid, dumb. But I've, as an aside, I've often mentioned why I wear a sweater and cap. Okay, it's been in the mid to upper 90s here lately, so the AC's been blasting. Well, right now, with the blower not on, which is right up there, you can't quite see it, but it's right up there. It's 66 down here right now. But when that bad boy comes on, I swear it gets down to 54. I'm going to find out tonight. Anyway, okay. Yeah, it's great to look at what other people are doing and think about how you can. It doesn't hurt. I don't believe to let your ego run a little bit, and when you're doing this, and go, "Oh, I could do that better," or "That's a great idea in the rough. I could polish it." There's nothing wrong with that. I think all DMs do it. I know it's in the genetics to be a DM, to see other stuff and put it into your game, because we didn't have anything to put in our games except other stuff. So, go for it. Okay. Thinking about the jumping off a cliff scenario. Okay, we did that last week. I'm thinking of Rambo jumping off the cliff, then using his hero powers to grab some tree limbs on the way down. Come on. Rambo's a cartoonish movie. If you want to play, my opinion would be, if you want to play cartoonish games, then play some games based on cartoons, like superhero games and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Rambo is the worst example you could give me, because it's that. While I gotta admit, I enjoyed watching the flick, but I took it as what it was, a big giant cartoon on celluloid, or in this case DVD. But point remains. Okay, we'll continue here. I agree the cracked ribs, broken legs, etc. would surely follow. At the least, Dex is terrible until massive healing is available. If magic healing is involved, I like the roll methods in DCC MCC with magic that will sometimes backfire or not be perfect. Yeah, yeah, healing and magic that isn't perfect. In a local group here at one point in time, there was a player whose character had a duck foot and a head of a duck, but he could still speak, and some weird feet, because things didn't always work out the way they hoped. I think that's wonderful playing MCC or DCC, because both of those games have a different mindset to them. Those are about having fun and getting through the adventure, much more than they are about buffing up the character or min-maxing the character, at least in my experience when I've played them. Let's see. I feel there has to be some verisimilitude in the games I play, or I'm really not all that interested, unless it's a flat-out superhero game of some sort. Okay? That's a whole different ball game. Then everybody can shoot fiery farts out their fundament and enjoy themselves. Personal opinion. Yes, I still charge concepts and rules from any game I like. Which newer games or mechanisms do you like these days? Well, the only newer game that I have a great any experience at all to speak of would be Mutant Crawl, and I like it a lot. Um, I don't. I'm not interested in how other people are doing stuff nowadays, as opposed to how I do it in my Fly and Amber version of D&D. Just not interested. Um, and it's not humorous or I don't think. I just don't care. Um, and a little bit of ego says, yeah, while there maybe are a few things I could still pick up and polish up, I doubt that I will. Doubt that I need to. Anyway, let's see. ICRPG is fantastic too. I'm not sure what ICRPG is. Sorry. Um, Other than your own setting of Makanda, hope I spelled it right. No, Makanda is Makanda, and I named it after the little town that was my mailing address when I was going to college at Carbondale in Southern Illinois. Makanda. All right, I've got another adventure that I wrote that it takes place. I reference a name down close to where I lived. Um, anyway, you couldn't know that. Let's see. Are there any other than Makanda that I particularly enjoy? Well, Greyhawk would certainly be one of them. Uh, Really, that's the only one. Again, I'm not terribly interested in buying, settings, Forgotten Realms, or Sundered Lands, or, I'm just not my bag, and so I've never bothered to spend the money on them. Now, had I been still working at TSR when they started doing this stuff, it might have been a different story, because then I wouldn't have had to spend the money on them to see them. But no, not really. I just have fun doing my thing. Um, there's really none. Well, I have not read but one of Margaret and Tracy's books. And I don't even know which of the arcs it was in. I'd probably enjoy reading a book about it, their setting, but that's only because they're both outstanding writers. Um, if you have ever said the following, I know what the creature is, but my character would not, then you are role playing. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the whole point of role playing, is playing within the limitations of your character. You don't get cast as Lenny in Of Mice and Men and then deliver Shakespearean soliloquies. You play the character you have. You play the character you're given by the dice. And that is the finest essence, the fine point, the sparkling diamond in the heart of it all, of role playing. You don't try out for a part in a play and then just decide you're going to change it. You have to play the part you're given. Now, in role playing, we get to write a lot of our part and that we create it. But you still have to work within the limitations and parameters of the character you're given. You can't play a 65-year-old man like he's an 18-year-old sprinter. Okay? Or a 75 or we'll say an 85-year-old man. Just not ruffle any feathers of the 60s and low 70s people. Let's see. Hi, Tim and Kat and Mrs. Curmudgeon. But all right, in regard to jumping off the cliff versus shock damage versus birds or bats of prey, I'm not 100% on the rules for falling damage, but I suggest that shock damage can be applied over and above whatever physical damage the PC takes for tossing themselves off a cliff face. Well, okay. I'll go on. There's some other points made by this poster. Spite damage. I believe that it's in Liz Dansford's Deluxe TNT. There is an alternative rule for spite damage, which is a point or two of damage that makes it past even the best defense, i.e. in spite of. Something like this, call it shock damage, could well be the straw that broke the PC's back. It could be. Here we go. Birds or bats of prey. Pardon me. Failing that, why not have the PC's fragile, plummeting body be plucked from the sky by a bird of prey, talons still into their flesh until the bird carries them twice as high and promptly drops them for more damage than they can possibly survive. Nice lesson for the player. Nice meal for the birdie. Win-win. Yeah, okay. I know it's getting a little silly. Yeah, that would be cool. I'm going to jump off. Okay, and then out of the sky swoops a giant pterodactyl that snatches them out of the sky by spearing them on their long, pointy beak and flies off to feed their babies. Yeah, now come back from all those little poops. I don't understand why every so often people get into these hit point arguments. There's so many things that kill or maim that could care less. Poison, petrification, polymorph, paralyzation, and other numerous death spells, and the Vorpal, sharpness, 9-life stealer swords are not concerned with hit points in the least. Besides, it does not matter how many hit points you have. It's how many you have left. Good point. Good point. No, there are things that will kill you outright. There's no argument about it. You know, you're dead. But anything else, people try to weasel out of. They try to weasel out of it. Hey, it's, you know, it's a natural human trait to do something like that. Yeah, I mean, there is a connection between hit points and poison. You know, the half damage, etc., which I always hated, but I understood it. I just hated it. You know, well, until I understood it, I didn't like it. Yeah, how many you have left? That's a good point. Okay, in regard to hard to hit points versus war games, I was wondering about the evolution of hit points from the standpoint of wargaming, which I understand G. Gygax and D. Arneson and yourself were very familiar with. I had thought that an individual soldier would have points that more or less equivocated to armor, as in tank armor. Well, okay. Hit points evolved out of chainmail. The concept was present in a few board games that did something like step reduction. Okay, step reduction was a division being flipped over 4 times until it's only like a regiment. The concept was there: step, step, step down, hit, 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 and it was always in response to casualties. Chainmail had one hit killed, and Dave Arneson in his game said, no, these guys. It started out as kind of one of the unspoken gamer superstitions. If you play miniatures a lot, you got some favorites, especially if you use different figures to represent your commander figure. You're going to have some favorites. How you arrive at them, how they become your favorites, one of the ways is it just seems like, wow, this Green Knight is always alive at the end of the battle. He's never been, and so, okay, he can take 2 hits as opposed to all the rest of the hoi polloi that can only take 1. That's a concept. That's a different type, but it's inching its way along. Dave Arneson invented the term hit point, and it evolved out of his miniatures, his games. One had more than the other. Well, if this one's got 2, golly, this giant thing must have 5. I can't pretend to understand, how it evolved inside of Dave's head. But I do know he came up with the name, and it was, how many times can you be hit before you're dead? So they became hit points. That's really kind of the way it worked. The figures in war games were classified heavy infantry, light infantry. They were leveled, and then they were hard. The fully clad knights were much harder to affect casualties upon than the poor peasants that have been rounded up with their hay forks and their scythes. That's another aspect of the concept that became called hit points. Okay, now, I'm sure there are myriad, this is the same person, myriad rule systems for war games out there, but I'd like to ask, oh crap, I forgot. All right, I forgot something I'm going to tell you about. All right, I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Oh, I'd like to ask if hit points had a direct through line, 1-to-1, from war games, or was the ability to avoid the fatal blow an innovation from the above? Yeah, it started out, as a line result, but it quickly became apparent that okay, if I mean, look at look at the average schmuck in D&D. One dice villager, two you hit him twice and he's dead. Okay, that's a progression up from there. It is a progression, but Dave also innovated, and I won't take that away. I won't want to take away any innovator's credit for any innovation, and that was his. Okay, here we go on hit points again. Since hit points is a pool of how much energy you spend to avoid hits, armor class as a target 2 hit feels like a redundancy. I'm not sure how THACO works, but AC from 3E onwards uses your dexterity for your ability to avoid the blow, and then you add your armor to see if they can absorb the damage. Well, okay. Whole different shit. And first NO, armor didn't absorb anything. All right? All of a sudden, I notice in some of the later ones, it's like we got power armor now, or applique armor like you find on some tanks. First round just takes off a chunk of the applique. Second round in the exact same spot penetrates. Nah, that isn't the way. Thaco, 2-hit armor class 0. That's what Thaco was. So, if you had your Thaco was 14 and you're rolling 16s and the DM's telling you no hit, well, now you know you get something that's at least 2 levels better than 0, but what it represented on your armor chart, whatever, chain, fancy chain, however you break it down, whatever chart you use for that. Armor class is whether or not the first roll, think of it like this, the first roll to hit. Is the weapon being wielded capable of inflicting damage either to the armor or to the person wearing the armor? A good distinction, I'll grant you. Is it potentially have the damage or the capability to inflict damage? Okay, it does. So now, based on the weapon, how much damage might it inflict? I don't like the idea of armor absorbing hits and damage. I don't. Just I think it's a needless, messy complication. All right, armor class, swinging at it. Are you capable? How hard is it to possibly inflict some damage? There are many cases, especially really low characters, really high monsters, for instance, where there's no possibility of inflicting any damage and you're just going to get eaten. Well, okay. You shouldn't be able to run up with a rusty spoon and try to kill a boulet. Shouldn't work. In general, I'm speaking in very big generalities here. Very big generalities. But armor class is another evaluation of how hard it's going to be to inflict damage. All right? Because the better the armor, the less likely it is to be hit. The less likely it is to be hit, the less likely there are damage dice in the mix. One relies on the other. It's like a three or four. It's a stool you can't take a leg out from underneath. I don't know how many legs it's got, but you don't want to take any legs out. That's what Thaco is. Dexterity, those are given. Those have pluses and minuses worked in. If your base is, if you can be hit on a 12 or better by this particular thing, but you're really dex, maybe it takes a 14 or better to hit you. And again, hit is potentially inflict a wound or damage. And when I say wound, that's very generic. No location intended. Um, okay, yeah. I really think this is a cumbersome system, and just way too niddly piddly to be any better than what we used. Um, use dexterity for your ability to avoid, and then add your armor to see if it can absorb the damage and the hard to kill points interpretation. Would an armor class be better used to reduce how many hit points you spend to avoid the hit? No, no. Um, crystallize the moment. The weapon, big wicked axe. The target, you, clad in leather. How likely are you to be hurt, to lose hit points? Again, which may not necessarily indicate a wound, but that now your leather is not a very high armor class, so you've got nothing to add. No modifiers in that regard. Maybe you have a negative modifier, but we never did go beyond that, because 9 was just you and your tunic and whatever crude sandals you made when you wandered off from your one cow, one pig homestead to seek your adventures, seek your fortune. I like the old way. I believe it's cleaner. I believe it's purer. I do know that once you have, it's so simple that once you grasp the things in your head, you don't even need to look at charts. If you know the Thaco, you're home free. All right, now there was a follow-up to this. It's a good question. Interesting. We'll see what Tim says. Well, now you know what Tim says. From what it's worth, my guess is that hit points is more than just the ability to avoid the fatal blow. For instance, it is used to indicate the damage taken from poison as well. Good point, good point. And you can look at it, and it all works out together. That damage that you took from being poisoned is systemic damage. You're not as fast. You're not as robust. If somebody, pardon me, if normally, use a silly example, if normally you could be punched 4 times before you had to worry about being knocked down, after having been poisoned, you might get knocked down after 2. Your whole, you can justify that through saying your whole system has been ravaged by the poison. Hit point serves more than one purpose or indicates survivability from more than one form of danger. However, armor class is more specific, therefore having it separate to hit points makes sense to me, as does to me. Okay, now, I know, in fact, I'm friends, very good friends, with the person who wrote this next one, and I won't identify him. But I am gonna rip the question for its components, not what it's asking. One of my players has the most badass character sheet and backstory that I have ever seen. He's a 14th level Storm Giant Dragon Hunter Ranger with a Spelljammer ship and 9 Druger crewman slaves. That Storm giant. Okay, storm giant. We'll count that as one word or two words, one thing. Storm giant, dragon hunter, ranger. Oh, come on. Who the hell plays a storm giant if you're playing with a bunch of humans? Now, if you're all giants, okay. Not a hell of a lot for a bunch of giants to do running around in the world. Trying to pick up the little bitty coins is a problem. Or so I've been told. 14th level. What, you can play a weekend now and get a half a dozen levels? Okay, now here's the... If you thought I was going to rant there, no, it's coming. Problem is the player is a chicken shit. So I continuously have to bring the fight to him. Oh, he got to be 14th level because you spoon-fed him things to kill? If the guy's a chicken shit, let him be a chicken shit, and everybody else will be having fun, and he'll be standing in the back. I don't want to do that. Oh, I'm afraid. Fine, the world's full of chicken shits. Why he's going to play like a chicken? Was he tough making it up this high level, and now he's gotten cold feet? Or is he, if he started out as a chicken shit, then you spoon-fed him to get him to 14th level. And how can a storm giant, dragon hunter, ranger be a chicken shit anyway? The guy's obviously not playing the role. You're not doing him any favors by spoon-feeding him enough stuff to become 14th level. You do neither of yourselves a service. You do the campaign a disservice. Now, if all the players in your campaign are up around 12th to 15th level, that's a different story. But even so, how did he get there? Oh, you brought the fight to him. If the guy doesn't want to fight, don't let him fight. Let his character go sit in luxury somewhere in some little podunk town and let the world pass him by. Come on. A spelljammer ship? Give me a break. Slaves? Not a good word to use nowadays. Not a good concept to promote. Keyword in the debate for me is always hunter. Ever have a longtime player who wants to stay in town and enjoy spoils to a flaw? No. No. I told you what I do when the party brings in a huge pile of loot. Inflation hits them, and pretty soon they're broke again and they got to go out. Tough luck. The word comes out. There's bandits coming from everywhere, pickpockets, thieves. Their money just starts disappearing. Pretty soon they're nervous wrecks because somebody has to stand guard over their piles of shit 24/7. No, I haven't had that problem. Okay, I meant to show it to you. There's a new book out. It's called Perilous Times. Perilous Times. I am loving it. I've always been a fan of the Arthurian myth. Well, forget Arthur. What would happen if the members of the Round Table were immortal? It's hilarious. It's good. It's thoughtful. It's very droll. I'm only about a quarter of a way into the book and I'm already loving it. Perilous Times. It's a new release within the last few months. I'm sorry I don't have the author's name right now. I left the book upstairs in my kitchen table. So I didn't get it down here. But Perilous Times. It's a really good read. It's one of the more novel approaches I've seen to the cast members of the Arthurian legends. really interesting stuff. Try it. Look into it. I don't know how your weather is there, but ours has been abysmal. Most everybody's is. Stay hydrated. Stay out of the hot. Keep playing. I'll see a bunch of you in the fall. I'm not going to Gen Con in August. Oh, God, I've got more nightmarish memories tied up with Gen Con in August. I looked it up. For several years in a row, whatever weekend we chose in August, it was the hottest one of the year. Now, keep in mind that we were choosing these, August dates up around February and March. We weren't that big yet that we had to start planning for the next one the next week. But we had to plan it well in advance, and it was the hottest one on record that year. It was uncanny. Just uncanny how hot it would get up there. The funk. You remember the haze that we had from the Canadian wildfires? Those of us who enjoyed that last week? Well, the funk was just about that heavy in that small, sweaty horticultural hall. Now it's in the air-conditioned, sweaty, large convention center in Indy. I'll be in Wisconsin in October for Game Hole. Hope to see a bunch of you there. Until that time, Todata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.